What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's happening with the overall market as we have major news that just came out for Nvidia stock. We're going to talk about what's going on with the technicals and many factors out there thus far and what you should be watching for heading into tomorrow, as it's going to be another crazy day, in my opinion. Just know that I am not a financial planner. Take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. Anyways, the market is on fire. The market started off with a bit of a pullback this morning, but it was very minuscule compared to the upside we got. And what led the market up today was Nvidia. We got some major news for Nvidia, which helped the market bounce to a large extent. Now, the question is, will SPY start to retrace a bit as we're hitting some tough resistance? And even if we retrace a bit, can we continue to squeeze to new all-time highs? I think this depends a lot on the news that comes out for tomorrow. So let's talk about this. Why is the market still bullish and why did the market get a very, very nice bounce? The answer was mainly because of Nvidia stock and some developments involving the US and China, which I'll talk about in this video. I first want to say that this is the news right here. The US has cleared around 10 Chinese firms to buy Nvidia's second most powerful AI chip, the H200. But as of right now, deliveries have not been made. Despite this, this is still a big breakthrough in China, and this is major, major news. Keep in mind that Jensen Huang also said that the AI market alone in China would be worth over $50 billion this year alone. So that's fantastic. Major news for Nvidia. Here's more details about this. It was the US Commerce Department that was giving the authority the green light for this, allowing 10 Chinese companies, including Alibaba, Tencent, JD.com, and many others out there, to purchase the H200 chips. This is important because each approved buyer is allowed to acquire up to 75,000 of these chips, either directly from Nvidia or through approved intermediaries. So that's, once again, a fantastic piece of news. And this aligns with what we just heard from the president of China, Xi Jinping. He has told the American CEOs in China with President Trump that the door to business in China will open even wider. So that's a big piece of news, especially because China is one of our biggest trade partners, and these relationships are going to be very, very massive. On top of this, it's worth noting that China is very much involved in AI, tech, and all these different sectors. Although you could argue they're a massive rival of the US, there's still going to be high demand for certain products, and the US also does rely on China to some extent. So, for example, if you look at Elon Musk and Tesla, they do depend a lot on China when it comes to manufacturing certain parts, and tariffs do affect them. Tariffs do affect them, at least to some extent, maybe not as immensely as a company like GM or others out there. But of course, every piece of policy does matter, at least to some extent, right? For example, the tariffs are going to be impactful. Any news involving approvals and such are also going to be impactful. So what is so important about Nvidia? And here's the answer. Nvidia is the first major company to get a major, major win so far in this trip to China. As of right now, we get to see them selling more of their AI chips to many Chinese firms. But the question is, who is going to be next? It might not just be Nvidia. It could be Aapl with Tim Cook next. It could be Elon Musk announcing something very big. This is major news, and we're going to see what this leads to, at least moving forward. So keep that in mind. We're going to see what happens, at least for the time being. On top of this, I want to add on that with more pieces of news, President Trump and President Xi of China are negotiating right now, and they are exploring a $30 billion tariff cut plan. This could reduce tariffs to a large extent on non-sensitive goods to boost trade. That's also going to be very important for national security, according to President Trump. And of course, there's going to have to be a deal that is made. Now, President Xi did warn us that if the U.S. mishandles Taiwan, that could lead to conflicts. But that was the only negative thing we've heard so far. The majority of the claims have been more positive. So we're going to see if there's going to be a big tariff deal. And then on top of this, we had some more news from President Trump. He was discussing the whole Iran war situation, and China have said that they are not in favor favor of militarizing the Strait of Hormuz. They're also not in favor of a tolling system over there. So that's very similar to what the US wants, but more details are to be discussed, at least thus far. We're going to see if China is going to get involved, if they're going to try to pressure Iran or not. But of course, they would greatly prefer if the strait is open because it negatively affects them when it's closed, right? President Trump also said that he's expecting a long talk with President Xi of China about the Iran war. He also said that the US does not need any help from Beijing in resolving the 75-day conflict. But of course, he did also imply in the past that the US would take any help that it could get from other allies or even other countries. So far, a peace deal does seem to be stalled. So we're going to see what China ends up doing and what their position is going to be. But there could be a big deal coming, according to President Trump. We'll have to see what ends up happening. And besides that, we actually heard President Xi of China say that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. And once again, he agreed with President Trump on his claim that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So, some good news did come out from this. So far, China seems to be on similar terms with the US. And the fact that they have mentioned that they are once again open to opening their doors wider to the US and increasing these business deals, that is nothing but good news, at least so far. So, the majority of news has been good from China, but we're waiting to see if there's more deals involving Iran, if there's a deal involving Tesla. We have to wait and see on that. On top of this, Iran is letting some Chinese ships now pass the Strait of Hormuz. That's what they claim. But these are the numbers right here. In the last 24 hours, only 12 tankers and other ships passed the Strait of Hormuz. That is still a massive decrease compared to before. That is like less than 20% of the daily output we used to get. And so far, from what I was reading yesterday, it looks like the oil that's passing is only at 5% of the normal levels. So there's 95% less oil passing than what should be. It's still a very, very big disruption. It's very, very sad to see that. Last but not least, okay, two more things to remember. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, May 15th, 2026. Keep in mind that at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time, that's 15 minutes before the stock market opens, we have the industrial and manufacturing production numbers coming out. This may cause some volatility, so get ready for this, and we're going to see what this leads to moving forward. Besides that, it's going to be a Friday, so there might be a lot of consolidation. Also, I just want to add on that we have very quiet earnings for the rest of the week, but next week we do have Nvidia announcing earnings. I think it's going to be next Wednesday. I will talk more about that later on. So looking at the markets, I am seeing some tech stocks selling off in the after hours. I do wonder if the market sells off a little bit, but just like today, we sold off in the morning, then we got completely bought back up, as it depends on the China news. It depends on what happens with Iran and if there's any sorts of deals. So on SPY, if we're bearish, you want to see us basically fail at that 745 support. If that fails us, we could return down towards 742. And then if that fails us, I'm looking for 740. If we lose 745, we're looking for a bit of a retracement. But every time we touch this green line over here, so that's going to be our 20 EMA, we keep bouncing, bouncing, and bouncing off the green line. So if we come down tomorrow towards this green line or come close to it, we could still essentially bounce and continue to squeeze if we bounce off the support. We have to take out 750 to be more bullish, and we're going to see if we just break past 750 and squeeze, or if we come down first and then squeeze. It really depends, but that's the most likely possibility. If we lose the green line, I will turn more bearish, but as of right now, we keep on getting bought back up, so we're favoring a dip and a bounce as the most likely possibility. So keep that in mind. That is the most likely possibility, that we continue to get bought back up. We might get a small pullback because that's what typically happens on Fridays sometimes, but then we could just get bought back up as time goes on. For other tickers out there, I just want to mention that we also have a slight bearish divergence on SPY, and volume is declining, which makes me suspect we might gap down or see a small pullback. We could retest like 745 or so, but then as long as we don't lose 740, as long as we don't lose the green line right here, we could still bounce. It might just be a small dip before we continue to squeeze and attempt to break to all-time highs. The QQQ, it still looks more bullish to me. It's still technically making higher highs and higher lows over and over again. It's still holding up very, very nicely. It is possible we retrace a little bit to retest our 20 EMA. I think it would be very healthy to do so because there's tough resistance at 722. We could come down to the support right here around 715. If it doesn't hold, I'm looking for 710. But then between 710 and 715, we could bounce and continue to try to squeeze. As long as we don't lose 710, we're going to be fine. So there could be like a 5 to 10 point dip before we continue to squeeze higher. If we get some kind of news involving China, that could cause us to continue to squeeze. I think we pull back just a little bit and then we could continue to squeeze as time goes on. But it depends on the announcements involving China and if we get any good pieces of news. On the IWM Russell 2000, we're testing this yellow trend line acting as a resistance. We keep on rejecting off the yellow trend line, as you guys could see. So this is acting as a tough area to break. We kind of reject, which makes me suspect that we could be retesting either 283.29 or 281, and then we'll see if we can try to bounce off of that or not. So keep that in mind. We're basically trading sideways on the IWM. On ES, we're hitting a tough area around that 75 40 area. It's a little bit tough to break past that. It would be very healthy if we retrace to about 7,500, if not as low as I would say the 7480 area for a small retracement. And then we could still try to bounce off that and squeeze into the 7500s. We're still technically bullish until we're not. We have to see a break of structure for us to change directions, but we're not ready yet. So keep that in mind. NQ has a slight bearish divergence. We might come down just a little bit, retest this imbalance around 29,540, or go as low as like the 20 EMA, which might be closer to like the 29,400s. Small decline, then a bounce and a continuation for basically 30,000 is very possible. That's what I anticipate as a strong possibility. Bitcoin's looking pretty strong, but 82,000 is acting as a tough resistance. It's not that easy to kind of like break through this. So keep that in mind, at least for Bitcoin. We're going to see how well this attempts to hold up as time goes on. I still think that the setup on Bitcoin is looking quite decent, and we could continue to attempt to squeeze if we could hold above our key support. And that's going to be very vital for how we end up moving. So keep that in mind as time goes on. We're going to see if the buyers end up defending or not. But like I said before, the resistance right here at 82,000 is kind of tough to break. We could retrace for 80,378, and then we'll see if we bounce or not. But that's going to be very, very key for how we end up essentially moving. So keep that in mind, especially as time goes on, and then we will see if we get some kind of bounce or not. For other tickers out there, just to be very clear, we also happen to have Tesla. Tesla's retracing a bit. We're going to likely retest this yellow trend line, taking us down for 435 to 440, but then we could bounce again. I think we consolidate for the most part heading into tomorrow, but we're still forming a possible bullish wedge. If you look at the yellow line, it's acting as a support. We could come down to the yellow line, bounce for 450, come down and consolidate before we attempt to break out for 460 to 470 heading into next week. Might be a small retracement, a bounce, retracement, and bounce before we squeeze for the 460s to 470s. On Nvidia, we're looking very bullish, but 235 is a little tough to break. We could retest 232.5 or the key fib level around 230 before we try to bounce again. We're still bullish. We're going to see if we fill this gap first or not. Might see a small 2 to 5 point retracement before we try to bounce and squeeze for 240. Heading into earnings, we still look bullish, but coming down a bit would be completely normal. Aapl could retrace a little bit for that 295 area of 298 does not hold, but then after that, we could still attempt to bounce looking at the current setup. For other tickers out there, we have Palantir. If we take out 134, we're looking for a pushback up to 136. It's looking decent. It depends on if we could break past resistance. Might consolidate for some time before it attempts to bounce. AMD is showing some weakness. We're looking at 439. We have to hold this to bounce. If we don't, we're going to likely decline. I think this dips for 439, and we'll see if we bounce or not. On Coinbase, we're going to see if we reject. We have kind of like a triple top here. We have to break 218. If we don't, we're going to be looking for essentially 205 to about the 200 area as our support, and we'll see if we bounce or not. On Amazon, we're rejecting. We're going to be looking at 266 as the main support. If that fails us, we could be dipping to the low 260s. Meta is rejecting here. We're going to see if we come down towards 611, then we'll see if we bounce or not. Google might be looking for a small retracement for 392. And then Microsoft might be looking for a decline back down to 404, followed by Oracle possibly rejecting, looking for a pullback to about 190. So for other tickers out there, we have Netflix. It has a double top rejection. It could be declining back down to the 85 area for a temporary dip. For other tickers out there, we have MSTR, which is rejecting, looking for 183 to 180. Celsius is kind of like pushing here, looking for 30, and we'll see if we reject or not. Supermicro is looking for a dip towards the 32.72 area to 31, and we'll see if we bounce. And then Palantir is rejecting off 134. If that fails, we're looking for 130. Rivian is looking for a retest of 14.35, and SoFi is looking for a pushback up towards 16.25. So ultimately, guys, I think that, with the VIX coming down to fill this gap, we're going to be watching this support zone around 16.5 to 16.8. We could decline a bit more, and we'll see if we bounce. The 10-year and the dollar are all kind of flat right now. So is crude. Crude actually has an inverse head and shoulder, so it might actually try to bounce. So my anticipation is that, based off the fact that a lot of tech stocks look like they want to dip, I do think the market might decline a little bit, especially because 750 is a tough resistance. It's not going to be that easy to break this. So I do expect a small pullback tomorrow based off our key fib levels. You could also draw out our some levels to watch for just like this. But 745 is the 0.236 fib level, and then we could even go a bit lower. But then we're going to see if we could bounce either near 742 to 745, if not as low as 740, which is the 0.5 fib level near the golden pocket. But overall, we're still bullish. We're still bullish in terms of the trend. The trend is still making higher highs and higher lows. There's no sign of that stopping, at least thus far. We're still making higher highs and higher lows. When we were making higher highs and higher lows, you have those moments where we kind of like pull back for a day or even just a little bit, then we squeeze. We pull back a bit, then we squeeze. So we're going to see if we break 750 to keep going, or if we come down first. I anticipate we might come down a little bit first, back down to 745 or a bit lower on SPY before we attempt to bounce again if we hold support. And I think the same thing about the QQQ, especially. I think this is going to lead SPY, at least to some extent. There's a bearish divergence. We're going to see if we take out 722. If we don't, we could return for 715 to 710. Then we'll see if we bounce and continue to squeeze. Honestly, guys, that's what the charts suggest. But just remember, I cannot predict everything that's going to happen tomorrow. The reason is because we don't know what's going to happen involving the US and China. We don't know what's going to happen involving Iran tomorrow. And we're going to see if there's any big deals to come or not. We also are going to see if there's any deals involving China and Tesla. We have to just wait and see. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. But nonetheless, I think that the charts are still on uptrends. There's going to likely be a slight decline, but that could still get bought back up as time goes on. Anyways, that's it for this one. I thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back very soon tomorrow before market open. Until then, wish you all the best as always. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.